Welcome to another edition of Unscripted and Unstoppable. I am your host, Laureen Quick, and this is a space for honest communication, honest conversations about the inner work women are doing as they navigate change, loss, identity, and what comes next, especially after 50. Today's conversation touches on a tender and often unspoken terrain: parent-child estrangement. For many mothers, this kind of loss doesn't come with rituals and casseroles and a clear language. It's a grief that lives quietly inside them, alongside shame, confusion, embarrassment, and most importantly, the ache of losing someone from a distance. This is not an episode about taking sides. And it's not about quick fixes or easy answers. It's a conversation about dignity, about responsibility with self-care and without self-erasure. And it's about how women want to live fully, even when reconciliation may or may not be possible. My guest today is Jennifer Morrison, a parent coach who guides parents to become more brave, grounded, and steady, to feel seen and heard, and to regain a sense of inner control, especially during seasons of estrangement and disconnection. Together, we are going to explore what estrangement asks of us, not just as parents, but as human beings, learning to stand steady in times of uncertainty. If this topic is personal for you, I invite you to listen gently. Take breaks if you need to, and know that you are not alone. Let's begin. Jennifer, I'm going to just jump right in and ask. Many parents feel utterly alone in estrangement. From what you're seeing as a coach, how common is this experience, and why do so many mothers feel like they're the only ones?
Well, thank you firstly for inviting me and for that great introduction. Look, it's a very tender and difficult subject to begin with anyway. And a lot of the parents that I talk to, the feeling of estrangement is usually starts off as quite baffling.
Mhm.
It feels like it's come from out of nowhere.
Mhm.
And that in itself makes you really question what you've done and where you've been up till now. So, I can only talk from my own personal experience with this, is that it just seems to knock the wind out of you,
Mhm.
and it puts you in a place where you've never expected to be. It's definitely uncharted waters. And you do feel like you're the only one that's in there. Until something comes up and someone else might mention that, oh, my friend's in that same boat, or gee, my sister's going through that. And you go, wow, I didn't know it was big. It almost feels like it's become a thing.
I think it
Um,
has. I think it's definitely more common than many of us realize. It's a
yeah,
shock to us and our system, and so our when we're shocked, I don't think our upper brain works as well, right? We kind of go into
yeah.
confusion and bewilderment, and then eventually, I think I would hope as we begin to come out of that, we can start to learn that this is more common than we realize.
Yes. And look, it is a grief. I do grief counselling with bereaved people. And look, it's the same as a grief. The difference is that the person you're grieving hasn't left this earth. They haven't been celebrated with a funeral or anything like that. It's a grief where the person has left your life and there's no closure around it. You
Yeah,
have to find your own closure, and that is a very difficult thing.
I think when someone passes, as in dies in our life, there is a marking of that.
Yeah.
And it brings closure.
Mm.
But when this happens, there is no marking, and there is no closure because you're still left with this hole that's inside you that in many cases we don't understand.
Yes, yes, because innately, we're as a mother, you never feel that your child's going to leave you. And, you know, I'm sure all mothers or women listening could connect to the fact that when you carry a child and you bring them into the world, they are a big part of you and you live your life with them and you have hopes and dreams for them moving into the future. And when something happens where that child is taken from you, either through loss and death, which is an amazingly painful space to go to, um, or through estrangement, it leaves you with this very big gap. And it also gives you a lot of angst and it brings up a lot of churning for you because you wonder what you've done. How did you do that? What on earth did you do to let this child down so much? And it unravels so many parts of your psyche.
Mhm,
And it's hard sometimes to know where to go with that. When you lose someone to death, it is terribly painful. However, it's almost like you've even lived with them while they've been very ill and they're dying.
mhm,
And so you've had an opportunity, I guess, to sort of get used to the fact that you're going to lose. And you never do not miss having lost someone. But when something like this happens, like in my instance, there was a family situation where, there was heated words and exchanges and they left in a huff. But I didn't think much more of it because I thought, well, this happens in families and gee, it's a shame it happened and everybody apologized. But what came after that was completely out of the blue.
yeah. Yeah, and it's also like when someone has passed away, frankly, there isn't further conversation. It's not like
Yes,
you can go back and, I mean, you may have regrets with the people in your life
yes,
who die
of
and
course.
wish that you'd done things differently, but you also recognize that's not going to be a possibility. But
Yes.
with a relationship where the other person's alive, they're still
Mm.
out there in the world, and there is this hole in your heart that you wish you could fill and hope that you can fill someday through reconciliation,
Yes,
whatever that looks like. So
yes,
it's not a grief that ends. It's a grief that goes on and on and on, right?
yes,
Yes.
yeah,
And I do think there is some level of a huge level of self-doubt, right? We go
yeah,
into the what did I do wrong? Right? How could this have happened? And
yeah,
and of course, I think as women, we often want to blame ourselves more than we blame anyone else. And that may or
yeah,
may not be applicable in any situation, but we tend to do that. And so we need
yeah,
to be thoughtful about how we develop the story that we tell ourselves around this separation,
yeah,
and how
yes,
things have fallen apart.
yes,
Yeah. And it
yes.
doesn't just affect you and your child, it affects the whole family as
It
well.
does. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a gaping hole that is hurting and
Yes.
continues to hurt.
Yes. And that feeling of digging back into yourself is very normal, I think, for most women on lots of things in our lives. And I certainly went back into that space. And look, we had a troubled situation with this child from his youth. There'd been situations where it was very, very difficult to keep him safe and to always be there for him. And yet we'd always come through those sorts of moments back to a space where I knew that we were okay.
Uh-huh.
and that there was that deep love from him to me, and that I was an important part of his life. But when this happened, the first thing you do is you blame yourself. You think, well, I should have been kinder. I shouldn't have spat that word out from just sheer hurt and anger. And I did. I drilled back on myself for weeks, and I found myself walking around the house and just shaking my head because I was so incredulous. I just could not believe that it had happened. And I honestly did just walked around the house and go, what the heck? What is this?
Yeah.
Why has this happened? I mean, what the heck? You know, because he just had a little one. The little one was 2, and we'd had this little one in our home every weekend. And we'd built this lovely relationship up with him. He was our my son's only and my first grandchild
Mhm.
from him. And it was just wonderful because I never thought he was going to have a child. He never did either. He was 42, and it was just a blessing. And this little person was just amazing, and we loved him to bits, and he loved us. And now he's gone. And you just think,
Yeah.
what? What? And
Yeah.
after that, a few comments were given, and my comment back was, well, if you felt that badly about it, why were you letting us have him every weekend and loving and caring for him? Where did we go wrong? And look, you have to get yourself out of that hole.
Hmm.
You can't stay there. It's like grief as well. There comes a point where somehow or other you've kind of got to dig yourself out of it and go, okay, let's look at this a little bit more objectively. Thankfully, I did have people around me who I kept saying it, and was in tears, and they go, okay, Jen, let's just go back to the start. Let's just take a breath.
Yep.
And one of the biggest components of that was my daughter, his sister. And I mean, like it does affect everybody in the family. They're always missing in action, this person, right?
Hmm. And at the same time, I think it's like we want to make sense of this. And so we
Yeah.
we work on trying to create this kind of simple explanation in some way or another. And in a lot of public conversation, it seems to me, we frame estrangement within a family as either toxic parents, or
Yes.
we frame the children as entitled children. And so I would ask you, as a coach who helps women get through this, what gets lost when we reduce it to that binary explanation?
Wow. Well, a lot gets lost, and I think the biggest thing that gets lost is the ability to, excuse me, the ability to see it for what it is. It's easier to label than it is to not, because it makes sense when we label something. It gives us some excuse or reason why we can go there. So
Mhm.
if it's a toxic space, we can utilize every little thing that was said that's caused us to be hurt, and that of course automatically equals toxic, when in actual fact it's not the case. The case is that, we all make mistakes and we all don't get it right. We're just doing the very best we can. But nowadays, even us saying, well, we did the very best we can isn't actually an acceptable statement, apparently, from the other person. And this is what I got. Well, you should have, if you didn't do good enough, but that was the best I could do. And that's very painful as well, because it's thrown back at you that, well, even that wasn't good enough. So,
Yeah.
from my perspective, what I encourage my parents to do is to not stop the love, to not harden, and to not get bitter around this, which is something that's not easy to do.
Hmm.
And if you've been a parent that's been very involved with your child on all levels, that's very hard, because it can make you bitter, and it can make you very, very angry as well. All of these things are perfectly normal, but I try and encourage my parents to stay loving and to stay soft, and also to be brave enough to go back into the space themselves and really honestly look at what has been happening over a period of time. Because none of this comes from just a moment.
Hmm.
It builds. And like anything, it builds. And at some point, something occurs. It's either good or bad, right? You either have an explosion and you have the opportunity to talk about it and to say the things you need to say, and you need to be able to allow the person to say them without any judgment, and then
Hmm.
take that on board and give it thought. Equally, too, I encourage my parents to forgive themselves. It's really important that you do forgive yourself. You're not perfect.
Yeah. I,
We're
I
not
I would
perfect.
think that would be very important. That what I hear when I listen to you talk about this is that this is complex.
It is.
There's no easy they're wrong and I'm right, or I'm wrong and they're right.
Yeah.
That's not going to be thinking that helps you live with and learn
Mm-mm.
from and even potentially repair the relationship. So you have to stop that binary thinking. And I think what you said was, keep yourself open,
Yeah.
soften yourself, keep the love flowing, make that a priority. And whenever you're thinking about the other person and when you're thinking about the relationship that you have, I think that's pretty critical. And I love that you also stress self-forgiveness, that we tend to focus on self-blame. This, I must have
Yeah.
done something wrong, but rather than focus on that, let's focus on how can I learn to accept that I'm imperfect and that my child is imperfect as well, and that somehow we've
Yes.
messed this up. But no one's to blame. We're just two people, a family doing the best it can in circumstances, and breathe. Just do a lot of
Yeah.
breathing, I would guess. Yeah.
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 Because, and the other hard thing for parents is accepting that their child has not turned out the way they expected. I think it's easy to put your children in a space where you just see them as succeeding all the time, and that's what the goal is. But that's not what it is. The fact is that we're all human, and we all have our own realities, and even our children have their own realities in the space that we live in as parents, and they don't see it the same way as we do, which is perfectly normal. And it's admitting that your child has actually done something that you couldn't imagine them doing to you, let alone anyone else. And that's a hard space to go into as well, because the hurt that's inflicted, either intentional or not, is it's almost unexplainable. I still struggle with that. Um, because I know the journey that I'd been on with this child, and it had not been easy. And we'd come to a space of, oh, I did as a parent, oh, phew, finally he's in a safe space,
Hmm.
you know. And and it was a relief for me that he was in this safe space, and that he'd found someone, and that he had this child that he adored, and that it had made a big difference to his life. And
Hmm.
I felt really glad for him because it had been a struggle, you know. So you've got to be kind to yourself, but you also have to be objective. But it takes a while to get to that objective space, I have to say.
I would imagine, and I would also imagine that's kind of an ongoing process where you can
It
see
is.
things objective and then something happens that triggers you back into a hurt
Yeah.
state where it's easier to blame than it is to say, I had a role in this.
Yes.
When you're
Yes.
working with your mothers, when you're working with your parents, how do you help them understand the role that they played in that? Because, like you said, it didn't happen in one moment. It was a series of events over time.
Yeah. Well, what I do is, and look, part of my parenting guidance is we need to go back to where we were as children, because parenting has an impact on all of us.
Hmm.
And going back to our own parenting journey can be very helpful because if we can see patterns that are coming through generations, which can be destructive, and they are, then
Hmm.
we can make decisions around, okay, I was parented in a certain way that did have an impact on me that was negative. And I have spent time healing that within myself and wanting not to bring that into my own parenting journey. So what I'm asking parents to do is to look at it and go, well, what part of that narrative can I change so that I can be a better parent myself and
Hmm.
not be triggered by these things from my childhood? Because that's usually what happens to us, is when we're triggered, it's normally something that's unhealed, that we haven't come to terms with, we haven't faced, or we haven't dealt. And in my situation, I was a young mum and I was still dealing with a lot of trauma from my childhood. So, yes, I know that my parenting wasn't always ideal, that I did not have that maturity that one would like from a parent to be able to look at what or how I was doing things and not realizing that the impact of that would be long term. And I'm
Hmm.
not saying this is anything critical. Like there was no abuse, there was no physical abuse or mental abuse. It was just not knowing the little things that for a sensitive child who then I found out later in life actually had bipolar, was having an impact on the way that they felt. And that could just be in simple interactions. You know, when a little one's misbehaving, you go, oh, come on, hurry up, we've got to go. That was just simple things like that that I wasn't aware that were having an impact over a period of time of I'm not seen, I'm always hurried up,
Hmm.
just that sort of stuff. So when parents can go there, then it's easier to look back. I can look back now and go, I can see where this started.
Hmm.
It wouldn't have necessarily meant that it would never have happened. And that's important to really get your head around as well, because it's not always about just them as a person. It could be that in their teens they've got involved in drugs and things like that, and that's affected them. Now, that's a big part of this. Or the person that they're with is having a massive impact on them, and that can have so there's, as you said earlier, this is so complex.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that the narrative in the media is, well, your mum and dad were toxic, so leave them. Or your kids were toxic, so leave them. It's not that easy. A lot of children in these spaces come from families that love them so much and really want the best for them.
Hmm. I,
And
as I listen, it's like I think a lot about my family. My parents were not perfect, and at the same time, I lived a fairly happy childhood, but I definitely was more sensitive than I think they ever realized. And what I also saw with my two daughters as I raised them was I interpreted their behaviors in a way that fit my frame.
yeah,
And so, for example, my youngest daughter seemed to me to like to spend a lot of time alone. She always went off and played by herself, and I just thought she's very independent. That's my
yeah,
interpretation of her behavior. Come to find out that was not the actual thing that was going on, but rather it was more she's anxious socially, and needed support and making friends and having connections as a child. But I
yeah,
totally misread her behavior. So I treated her as if she was this very independent young child that grew up into a very independent young woman. And I never questioned my assumptions in that relationship. And the learning there is we can assume a lot about other people in our lives, but our assumptions may not be correct. And
yeah.
that may be hurting them when we don't even know it, right?
No,
Unless
no.
we talk about it. So the whole beginning of this to me is, don't assume that your relationships are all healthy. And this is
No,
more than just child and parent, parent and child. This is husband and wife. This is boyfriend, girlfriend. This is friend and friend. Don't assume that everything that you think is happening is actually true, you need to
Yeah.
talk to each other about how you're perceiving things, how you're receiving things, how you feel about things. So you take your relationships and go to a meta level to build a stronger relationships.
Yes.
And that knowledge is good to have going forward, but would have been a little more helpful for me as a parent if I had thought about that as I was raising my daughters as well, because I'm sure I missed
And
a
yes.
lot of things.
Yeah. And see, therein is where that, well, you know that now, but why didn't you know it back then? That's not good enough that you know it now. And that's the kind of narrative that seems to be being said, which is really unfair because every parent from time immemorial has gone through the same process of making assumptions on all of the best decisions that you have at the
Mhm.
time. This child of mine was very much on his own, loved doing jigsaws, just loved having you there. He interacted well with his sister, but he was never really comfortable making new friends, things like that. And I perceived that he was very artistic. So I saw that that was the way that he operated. His sister was the complete opposite,
Mhm.
total social butterfly, all the rest of it. Uh, so that's really all you can go with when they're little, right?
Yes.
And so you nurture those things, thinking that you're doing the right thing. And it is only when you get older. And look, if you do keep communicating, and in our situation, the communication really look, I had a divorce when he was 11, so of course that has an impact, there is
Mhm.
no doubt about that, but my I very much was always there and very much was always communicating, but obviously it wasn't the sort of communication that he needed at the time, and it just progressed. And then, of course, you know, because of that, some children end up in situations with the wrong people, get led or don't get led, but go into spaces that you don't want them to be, that you can't be in, and you can't drag them back out of. So it's never easy. It's
No.
never ever one thing. Um, but as a parent, that's the hardest thing to come to terms with is you've really, really got to seriously look back at it and go, okay, when they get to a certain age, you don't have the ability to any longer contain them and to make the rules for them and to keep them safe. You've done all that, and you hope you've done that to the best of your ability so that when they go out there into the world, they will be okay. And we've also, in this instance, we've got adult children estranging. So this child's now 47. He's an adult.
Yeah.
I have no bearing over what he feels, wants, does, or anything. I have no, I don't have the right, as some people seem to think that as a parent you have the right for stuff, but we don't. It's not a right because you're a parent.
No. And,
And
and
that's a hard thing to grab too for some people.
well, it is, I think, because, and this leads me into my next question. So many of us, so many women identify themselves as mothers. So their whole sense of who they are is I'm this mother. And even, you know, even as my child is now in their 40s, I think I should be mothering them the same way I mothered them back when they were in their 20s. Well, no, actually, that doesn't work too well. Um,
No.
but also when this happens, I think that the woman's self-identity must go into a crisis mode. How do you help your clients deal with that?
Yeah. Um, and the other thing is that by the time that, well, with in my instance, I had grandchildren involved. So it's
Mhm.
not just one, it's just not your child now, it's their child.
Yeah,
And it's also your family, and they've got kids. So there's cousins. So I forgot the question, I'm sorry.
just the whole idea around our identity is shaken
Yeah,
when our
yes, it
child
is.
rejects us through this process.
Yeah,
It's rejection.
it
So
is.
suddenly we question who we are because
We do.
being a mother was an important part of who we are.
Yeah, and that rejection is the most painful. It's even more painful than being made redundant at work or anything because that's work, right? But rejection as a parent is the ultimate, almost, if you like, betrayal. You just do not understand why that has happened. You've been with this person all your life and you've given everything you can to them because they are amazing. They are yours. Children, make you who you are as a mother. They turn you into someone different. If you've never had children, then you have a different reality. But when you have children, and it also you build things. You're building family, you're building memories, you're building all of these little blocks that make your family who they are. And
Mhm.
suddenly that whole system, whole ecosystem of that particular person and everything that's connected to them gets taken out. And it's shattering and it's hard to come to terms with. So as a human, from my perspective, even just as a human, as a woman, I just then started picking on everything I'd ever done, you
Mhm.
know, even to the degree with my other grandchildren, am I doing the right thing by them? I mean, have I spoken to their parents enough? Have I actually, gone down that road and been really clear about, do I understand what they really want so that I don't make the same mistake again, And there was a situation not long ago where something came up, and I remember saying to my partner, no, we're just going to leave that alone because I don't want to go down that space again. I don't want to risk that. So, yeah, everything you thought that you were doing okay suddenly sort of becomes not quite okay. And you do have to dig very deep. And you do, and this again is where I had to keep coming back to myself and saying, it was their choice, Jen. It was their choice to do this. And you can't change that. There's nothing in here I can change. We went down the road of trying to mediate. We did everything we could, and everything got blocked, stopped, pushed back. You know, baby albums got sent back, gifts got sent back. There was complete cut off. There wasn't even the opportunity to mediate. And I do think that if you have the opportunity to mediate, take it and just listen. Just shut up and listen because you need to do that. You're not there to justify your case. And that's a hard thing to say.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
really hard
So,
because you want to justify your feelings and everything, when in actual fact, this is a moment where you've just got to be quiet and listen to your child.
well, and the more you act on the justification plane, the worse it will get.
It
Right? Just
does.
it just reaffirms whatever it is that they perceived you to be as a mother to begin with.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah,
I think about this and it's like, all right, so then when this happens, expect a lot of self-doubt. And then
absolutely.
as you begin to recover from that shock of this in your life, it does become important for you to really spend time thinking a little bit about, not a little bit, thinking a lot about who are you first as a woman,
Mm,
and then who are you now as a mother, as a member of your family, and
mm,
what role do you want to play? And you may perceive that to be very limited, but I would encourage anyone in this situation to consider, are there creative ways that you can transform this situation into a way that you feel good about who you are and you
yeah,
feel good about the contribution you make to your family,
yeah.
and also that you are not spending the rest of your life in self-doubt
Yeah. And
because
also in grief, grief does soften. You've always got that ache and you've always got that feeling, but the way that I encourage it, and again from my own space, what I've done is I write to my grandchild every week. I have a journal and I write to him telling him what we're doing and who we're doing it with and all that, and asking him, how are you going? I hope you're having a good day at school and things like that. so that I am talking to him how I would be if he was here.
Yeah.
And that works for me. I also continue to buy him Christmas and birthday gifts. I put a lot of time and effort into it, just like I do the other grandchildren. He is still in my life and he is still my grandchild. And so I've got a box that has gifts and things in there, like I would do with any other of the grandkids. And I have a wonderful daughter who has promised that she will find him. If I go before I find this child again and have ability to be with him, she will find him and she will let him know all of the wonderful things that he has got in his family. And I also have a USB with all of the movies on it from when we had him up to
Hmm.
from 1 to 2, or from birth to 2, so that he can see this. Um, but that's the only way that I find that I can deal with it. And it means that I can live my life as a grandparent fully and as a woman, and I am happy and I am aware of this missing.
I think that's
But
a
I,
very creative way of rethinking
yeah,
your role, right? As we
yeah,
were just talking about, that
yeah,
you don't have to say, oh, I never get to have a relationship with my son, my grandson. I don't get to have a relationship with my daughter, my granddaughters. No, you can still have one, but it will not be the traditional relationship that you always thought it would be.
no. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. I think that's the thing with being a parent, full stop, is that we have these ideas of what our kids will or won't be. And when they don't live up to that, somehow or other we feel that they've let us down. But that's not our role. Our role is when we have a baby, we're growing an adult, and that adult's going to leave us. And so
Mhm.
we give them the best tools we can to leave us. And then it's their choice what they do with the life that they've got. But
Yeah.
then it's very important that we stay grounded in ourselves and that we come to terms with all the different things that happen in our life. And women deal with a lot of stuff in their life, and you can either choose to go as a victim mode in here, or you can choose to go, right, I'm not going down that road because it's not helpful. And it's amazing, 1 in 25 Australian parents are in this space.
Hmm.
And I know that the figure is a little bit higher in the USA. Doesn't make it right though.
No, but it definitely is something that happens.
It
It's not
does.
it's not this rare 1 in 1 million kind of
No,
situation. It's
no.
it does seem to happen more and more as the years
Yeah.
go by. Yeah.
And look, in the past, traditional families, you were meant to stay, you were meant to be loyal, you were meant to put up with that painful uncle and that horrible person. That was what was expected. And I think that on a lot of level, that's a good idea that we don't have to go down that road so much anymore. And we were expected to be loyal to the family under all circumstances. And I think that there is a big justification for estrangement of parents when you are in very, very dangerous situations. I'm not belittling that on any level. This is
Hmm.
not the area that I'm actually talking about because I don't have experience in that.
Yeah. Well, when you think about the parents you work with and that they agonize over whether to reach out, to apologize,
Mm.
should they wait? Do they just let this go? What do you think, in your opinion, is the most stabilizing, most respectful way to respond to this demand of
Well,
separation?
if your child has said to you, Mum, just leave us alone, don't contact us, and that means SMSing or anything, do it. Um, I wasn't told that until after I had received 2 gifts back.
Hmm.
Leave us alone. We don't want contact with you. And I had to suck that up and go, right, that's what they want. I will respect that. Because if you keep bashing on that door, it only reinforces why they don't want you in their life because you're not listening to them.
Right.
And a lot of this is around you didn't listen to me, you didn't see me. And that reinforces it because all you're trying to do is get your agenda out. I need to see you. I want to repair this. I want something back. That's not how it works. The person that's decided to go doesn't want you there.
And the hard part about this is the pain you have is so great, you override. that that discipline, right? To respect their wishes. But the
Yeah,
truth is that just makes it worse.
it does. Because I went down hoping that I would be received okay, and I got the door slammed in front of me.
Hmm.
I literally had the door slammed in, and I got in my car and drove down the road and I howled. I could not believe that I could be treated that appallingly by my child. And that's the sort of stuff that makes you want to keep on knocking on the door because you want to repair it. But
Hmm.
that's a very clear sign that enough's enough.
Yes. And for those mothers, this is my last question today, but for those mothers who might be wishing for reconciliation, but the chances are pretty slim that that's never going to happen, what does it mean for them to live a full, meaningful, connected lives that are not put on hold waiting for this to get resolved? How do you
Wow.
guide them or help them do that?
Yeah, look, it's hard. And it's about it's about going into yourself and being really, really fair to yourself and kind and loving and accepting it. Just accepting that this is the situation, that you did your absolutely very best. And if you don't go down that road, the thing, Laureen, is that you will get ill. And you also don't learn from it. You suffer from it. And it's important that you don't do that. And my biggest thing was also, how does this impact on the rest of my family? If I, as the grandparent, only focus on this one particular part of the family, what am I taking away from the rest of my family? And what are they feeling about it? And I have so much more family that need me and I need them. So my focus was to focus on what I had and to enjoy it and really, really make a point of being in and present with the family I have and let my other family just sit over there and they're always welcome when they want to come back.
Good advice, I think. Great advice.
It's a
Well,
hard space.
it is a very challenging situation to live with and to grow from. But
Mm.
um,
But
the
you can.
alternative, like
You
you said,
just,
it's just sit there and you'll make yourself sick. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And you don't want to live the rest of your life where you are constantly agonizing over someone who is actually not doing the same back,
yeah.
you
Um,
know?
it, in a lot of ways, this is like divorce.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
Very much so. It is equivalent to a divorce. You
yeah.
can have an amicable divorce or you can have a very bad divorce, but you still have to find your way back from that and you have to find yourself.
You do, you do.
Yeah. And, women are very capable of doing this. Make sure you've got a good network, make sure your girlfriends are aware. And if you feel the need to talk about your grandchildren, by all means do it, but don't go down that rabbit hole of woe me, woe me, woe me.
Mhm.
Just talk about the good things that have come about. You know, that's important.
Well, as we come to a close on this conversation, I do want to acknowledge that it takes courage to stay in the present moment in a conversation like this. So if you are listening as a mother carrying estrangement, I do hope that something today in our conversation has helped you to feel less alone,
Mm.
less reduced to a single story about who you are or what you've done. I hope that you're able to begin to see the complexity that surrounds you in all of this. And yet, at the same time, as Jennifer suggested, practice that self-forgiveness. It takes a lot of honesty, steadiness, and also, I think, a willingness to live your life with open questions. Whether reconciliation comes or not, your life is still your life to inhabit fully, and your worth does not hinge on another person's readiness to be in relationship with you. no matter who they are. And the love you carry does not, in my opinion, disappear simply because it has nowhere to go or land right now. It's still there, it's strong, it's powerful, it's beautiful. So don't stop carrying that love for all of the members of your family. I do also want to just say, Jennifer, thank you for being here today, for sharing, for bringing such a depth to this topic, such compassion, and grounded truth to this conversation.
Oh, you're
And
welcome.
also for the work that you do, working with parents who are struggling with these issues. I can imagine it must be challenging all the way around. For those listening, I thank you so much for listening to Unscripted and Unstoppable. If this episode has stirred something in you today, take your time with it, let it settle. You don't have to know what to do next, just breathe deep. And until next time, I would encourage all of you to take care of yourselves and as much as you can, look for the joy in your life. Thank you.